She thought her pain ended with his cruelty. But the truth he tried to destroy was the very thing that would make her name live forever. No one was ever supposed to uncover this. The record wasn't simply hidden, it was destroyed. The ashes were scattered across a Louisiana swamp, feeding the roots of cypress trees and the alligators that prowled the murky waters. For more than 200 years, it stayed buried, a dark stain on the page of history that people tried to erase completely, until now. A receipt dated April 11, 1851, surfaced not from an archive, but from the belly of a preserved crocodile shot by a wealthy hunter in 1922. Inside its stomach was a small sealed oilskin pouch. Within it, a single deed of sale. A young woman, described only as spirited, just 19 years old, sold for 15 copper cents, the cost of 1 nail. It was a message carried through time, a truth the weight of history could not fully destroy. But it wasn't the price that shocked anyone. It was the reason behind it and the name of the man who paid it. That was the secret they would have killed to keep hidden. Who was this young woman worth less than a nail? What kind of power or truth ran through her blood that made such powerful men so afraid? They tried to erase her by turning her into an insult, a symbol of worthlessness. But truth does not die. It waits. And the story you are about to hear is how that truth clawed its way back into the light. The official version was a lie. The whispers in the shadows came closer to what really happened. That courthouse in St. James Parish wasn't just a place of law, it was a stage. On that April morning, the men who gathered there weren't just trading property. They came to witness a ritual, a public humiliation designed to destroy someone's spirit. A man named Alastair Finch, whose reputation stretched from New Orleans to Baton Rouge, stood on the courthouse steps. His plantation, Belle Reve, was a kingdom built on sugar and human suffering, and he was there to discard one of his subjects, a young woman named Hetty. When he called her name, the silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. He wasn't there just to sell her. He wanted to strip her of every shred of dignity. He wanted the crowd to see her not as a person, but as a flaw in his world. Something so worthless that even 15 cents seemed generous. Imagine standing there, surrounded by faces that sneer and whisper, while the man who owned you declared your worth to be less than the dust on his boots. This wasn't a transaction. It was revenge. A performance meant to erase her existence. Finch was trying to purge something she carried inside her, a secret, a truth written in her very being. He used the familiar tools of his world, the auction block, the deed, the cold clink of coins, to do it. He believed that by setting her price so low, he could bury the story forever. He was wrong. The auctioneer, a man named Morrow with a face like spoiled milk, hesitated. Even for someone who had sold children away from their mothers without blinking, this felt wrong. The price was too low, an insult to the unspoken rules of the trade. A healthy young woman of 19 would have sold for hundreds, maybe thousands. Selling her for a few coins made people uneasy. It invited questions. Was she sick, cursed, dangerous? Finch wanted them to think so. He stood beside Morrow, stiff and cold, his eyes locked on Hetty with a cruel, burning intensity. She wore not the rough clothes of a laborer, but a torn silk dress that strained against her frame, a mockery meant to turn her into a spectacle. Finch wanted the crowd to see her as a grotesque version of womanhood, a warning. His presence filled the space, daring anyone to object. He had orchestrated every moment like a man pulling invisible strings. The crowd murmured. Men who came to buy livestock or tools now watched with uneasy fascination. It was a story they would tell for years, the day Alastair Finch nearly gave away a young woman for almost nothing. They didn't understand what they were witnessing. They thought it was cruelty for its own sake. They couldn't see the invisible war, the bloodlines, the rivalries, the buried histories colliding in that square. They were only spectators to the last act of a play they didn't know existed. At the center of it all, Hetty stood still, her expression unreadable. There was no fear or despair in her eyes, only calm, a stillness that unsettled everyone watching. It was the look of someone who understood that this was not an ending, but a transformation. Morrow's voice shook when he finally spoke. 15 cents. Do I have a bid for the girl? Silence. A minute passed. To bid on her would be to challenge Finch's performance, to claim something he had marked as worthless. No one dared. Finch expected that. He thought she would remain unsold, her humiliation complete, her body sent to labor in the fields until she broke. He wanted her existence to be a warning. He wanted fear to erase her. But then a voice broke through the silence. 15 cents, someone called from the back. Every head turned. A tall man stepped forward through the crowd, his clothes too fine for the humid parish square. His face was sharp, his expression calm and focused. The brim of his hat shadowed his eyes. He walked with purpose, the crowd parting around him. He came to the front, stopped before the block, and placed 3 5-cent coins on the wooden surface. The clink echoed through the silence. Finch's face twitched. This was not part of the plan. The stranger had ruined his carefully staged humiliation. "Your name, sir?" Morrow asked, glancing nervously between Finch and the newcomer. The man smiled faintly. "My name is Elias Thorne," he said, "and I believe I have just bought this young woman." The air grew tense. The crowd understood something was unfolding beyond their understanding. Two powerful men faced each other in silence. Whispers ran through the onlookers, old rumors about certain Louisiana families, about blood that could taint generations. Finch stepped forward, gripping his cane. His voice was calm, but every word trembled with fury. "You are not from this parish, Mr. Thorne. What brings you here?" Thorne tilted his head slightly, not in respect, but in quiet defiance. "I collect rare and valuable things," he replied. "You were about to throw away something priceless as if it were trash. I'd call that a bargain." The insult landed like a slap. The crowd gasped. Finch's hand tightened on his cane. He could let the sale stand and lose face, or challenge it and reveal too much. His voice grew venomous. "The woman is defective," he hissed. "Her size shows disease. She is lazy, unpredictable, worth exactly what I asked. A burden you've chosen to buy." Thorne's eyes stayed on Hetty, studying her with the precision of a man reading an ancient text. "Every treasure has its guardian," he said quietly. "Some burdens are an honor. The sale is lawful. The price is paid. Draw up the deed." He had turned Finch's cruelty against him. As the papers were signed, Thorne approached Hetty. He did not touch her. In a low voice meant only for her, he said, "Your name is Hetty, but that is not the name you were born with, is it?" For the first time, she looked at him directly. Something flickered in her eyes, something alive that had been sleeping for years. They left the courthouse in silence. Thorne had a small wagon waiting. He helped her up gently, not like a master, but like someone handling something fragile. As they rode away, she could still feel Finch's gaze on her back, burning, hateful, promising that this story was far from over. The road stretched ahead through the cypress swamp, the air thick with mist and insects. For the first time in her life, Hetty felt the weight of being watched begin to lift, replaced by something else, the uncertainty of freedom, or something close to it. Thorne was a mystery. He hadn't bought her for labor or for the cruel desires of men like Finch. There was a purpose to him, something deliberate in every move. He had called himself a collector. But what had he collected in her? Hetty thought of her life at Belle Rêve. Born in the main house, the daughter of the cook. Her mother had treated her with strange reverence and fear, teaching her to read and write in secret by candlelight. "Your body is a temple," her mother used to whisper. "Never forget the blood that runs in you. It is older and stronger than any whip." Back then, Hetty hadn't understood. She only knew her size and strength made her a target of Finch's obsession. He never whipped her. He used humiliation instead, forcing her to stand in front of guests, mocking her as a failed experiment. He studied her like she was something he owned but didn't understand. Now, sitting beside Thorne, her mother's words echoed louder. "The blood that runs in you." Could Thorne know what that meant? Could the secret her mother guarded so fiercely be the same reason she was sold for 15 cents? As the sun sank behind the trees, the swamp glowed red and gold. They stopped for the night in a small clearing. Thorne worked quietly, building a fire and laying out 2 bedrolls apart. He shared food and water but gave no orders, made no threats. When darkness settled, his deep voice broke the quiet. "Alistair Finch fears you," he said. It wasn't a question. Hetty stayed silent, holding her blanket tight. He went on. "He doesn't fear your strength or your mind. He fears your existence. Because if the world ever saw you for who you truly are, his world would fall apart." He stirred the fire, sparks rising into the black sky. "Tell me about your mother, Hetty." Her name was Celeste, she whispered before realizing she had spoken. Thorne's eyes flicked toward her, reflecting the firelight. "Correct," he said softly. "Few know that name. You come from a bloodline long hidden, one of power, not shame." Hetty's heart pounded. "Who are you?" she asked. "I'm a historian," Thorne said. "I trace what's been lost, bloodlines buried, truths erased. And your bloodline is the most remarkable I've found." He paused, watching her face. Finch married into the Daqua family, one of the oldest and richest Creole families in Louisiana. But he was not one of them. He was poor, ambitious, and the family carried a secret. A trait passed through the women, a mark of stature and strength. They believed it proved their divine right to rule. Hetty felt her breath catch. Her body, the one she had been taught to hate, was not a curse. It was proof. Thorne's voice lowered. Finch's wife, Isabella Daqua, was barren. For 10 years they tried for an heir. The estate could only pass to a child born of her blood. Without one, it would go to a distant cousin. Finch would lose everything, so he made his own heir. He knew of a hidden branch of the family, born from a forbidden union generations ago between a Daqua woman and one of her house servants. Their descendants carried the blood purer than any legitimate line. Your mother, Celeste, was one of them. The fire crackled between them. When Isabella could not conceive, Thorne continued, Finch turned to your mother. It was not love. It was a calculation to create a child with the blood he needed. But he misjudged the strength of that blood. He sought a son who looked like him. Instead, he created you. Hetty sat frozen, her heart pounding, her body trembling with something that felt like both anger and revelation. Her size, her strength, her existence, all of it had been his greatest failure and her greatest proof. The mark he tried to erase was the legacy he could never destroy. The cancer had been cut out, but the fear of its return never left them. It lived like a shadow in every creak of the mansion, in every rustle of the garden that had once been Finch's pride and obsession. The air around Bellevue felt lighter, yet uneasy, as if the land itself wasn't sure what peace meant after so many years of cruelty. Hetty moved through the rooms in silence, her fingertips tracing the carved banisters her ancestor had built. Dust had gathered where laughter should have lived, and the windows, tall, arched, and covered in vines, filtered the sun into thin golden stripes across the wooden floor. Sometimes she thought she heard whispers in the walls, soft voices in accents long gone, telling her to keep the truth alive. Down in the garden, The cypress trees still stood like sentinels, their roots tangled deep into the soil where the old ashes rested. The pond that Finch once used as a mirror for his perfect symmetry was now overgrown with wild lilies. The order he had forced upon nature was breaking apart, and somehow it was beautiful again. At night, Hetty would sit by the window, candle flickering beside her, studying the letters and ledgers that survived the fire. Names, debts, and signatures, all belonging to people whose lives had been turned to numbers in Finch's books. But one document caught her eye more than the others, a small, water-stained note written in a hurried hand. It wasn't Finch's writing. The note read, "He never found the second heir. She carries it in her blood, but not his name. When the time comes, she must return what was taken." Hetty's breath caught. It was signed only with an initial, A. She searched every archive, every family letter, every burial record she could find. There was no A. Finch, no A among the household staff, no A in any registry connected to Bellevue. And yet the handwriting seemed almost familiar, careful, elegant, filled with quiet urgency. Days passed and Hetty began to feel watched, not by a person but by the house itself. Doors she remembered closing were found open in the morning. The old clock in the study began ticking again after years of silence. Once, as she descended the staircase, she saw the faint outline of a man's figure reflected in the glass of a cabinet. Broad shoulders, hands folded behind his back, a faint smile that didn't reach the eyes. When she turned, no one was there. The dreams returned soon after. In them, she walked barefoot through the garden at dusk. The sky was bruised purple and gold, and the air smelled like iron and rain. Finch's greenhouse glowed faintly in the distance, though it had been destroyed long ago. Inside it, she saw the shadow of a man tending to his plants, but every time she approached, the figure would dissolve into a flurry of ash. One night, unable to rest, she followed the sound of dripping water down to the cellar. The walls were damp, the air heavy. In the far corner, behind the last shelf of tools, she noticed a small wooden hatch, one she'd never seen before. The hinges were rusted, the handle cold. When she opened it, a gust of stale air escaped, carrying the faint scent of soil and decay. A tunnel stretched beyond it. Crouching low, she followed it with a lantern in hand, the light bouncing off stone walls etched with strange looping patterns. After what felt like minutes or hours, she reached a chamber. In the center stood a small chest, blackened by time. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid. Inside were three things: a lock of braided hair tied with ribbon, a child's bracelet carved from wood, and a diary wrapped in oilcloth. The diary belonged to a woman named Eleanor. Each page was filled with delicate handwriting, recording a story of love and betrayal. Eleanor spoke of a forbidden union with a man she could never name, a man who worked the land under Finch's rule. Their child, she wrote, was taken from her before she could hold it. Finch had discovered the affair and ordered the child's removal to protect the purity of his line. The ink trailed off into a single drop, as though interrupted. Hetty closed the diary, heart pounding. The second heir, the hidden child, the mark of lineage that wasn't meant to exist. Suddenly the whispers, the dreams, the strange reflection in the glass, all of it made sense. She wasn't just Finch's descendant, she was Eleanor's too. The curse wasn't the family's shame, it was its secret redemption. From that night on, Hetty began restoring Bellevue, not as a monument to its cruel past, but as a sanctuary for the forgotten. The portraits of Finch's ancestors were taken down and replaced with the names of the enslaved, the lost, and the silenced. She replanted the gardens, not in rows of forced perfection, but in wild spirals of color and life. And yet, some nights, as the wind swept through the corridors, the scent of tobacco and earth would drift in. The clock would start its ticking again, slow and steady. Hetty would look up from her desk, feel that same faint presence in the room, and whisper softly, "It's over." But somewhere, deep in the soil of Bellevue, the cypress roots would shift. The land remembered, and the past, though buried, was never truly gone. Weeks passed before Hetty found the courage to open Eleanor's diary again. The pages had begun to crumble at the edges, the ink faded by time and damp air. She read each line by candlelight, her mind piecing together fragments of a history deliberately erased. In one of the later entries, Eleanor mentioned someone she trusted, a man of conscience trapped in a cruel house. He had promised to protect what she could not. She never named him directly, but she called him the archivist. That word echoed in Hetty's head for days. In the old servant quarters, she found a ledger of employment records. Among the gardeners, cooks, and coachmen, one name appeared repeatedly: Alaric Monroe, assistant to Finch from 1828 to 1841. Every record after that abruptly stopped. No burial, no departure notice, no trace of him in any city archive. Hetty began searching the estate for any sign of him. Behind the cracked plaster of the study wall, she uncovered a small recess, a hidden shelf sealed with wax. Inside it was a single envelope, yellowed with age, sealed with an embossed letter A. She tore it open carefully. The parchment inside was brittle, but the handwriting, sharp, controlled, unmistakably the same as the note she had found before, remained clear. It read, "If you are reading this, then the house has awakened again. The lies we buried were not to protect Finch's legacy, but to preserve what little goodness survived it. The child Eleanor bore was hidden far from this soil, but her line would one day return to cleanse it. If you are her kin, then know this. Not every servant served out of fear. Some of us stayed to protect what love dared to exist beneath his cruelty. My name is Alaric Monroe. I carried the truth through fire. I pray you carry it through time." The letter trembled in Hetty's hands. She felt a rush of warmth, grief, and something she could only describe as belonging. For the first time, Bellevue didn't feel haunted, it felt awake. She returned to the garden at dawn, where the first light broke through the mist and touched the earth like a benediction. Beneath one of the oldest cypress trees, she dug a small hole and buried the letter beside Eleanor's diary, whispering a promise that the truth would never again be hidden in shadows. Over the following months, Bellevue became a living memory. Hetty opened its doors, not as a museum, but as a refuge for stories like hers. Visitors came from across the country, drawn by whispers of the mansion that once carried darkness, but now stood as a testament to endurance. Sometimes, when the wind blew just right, it carried the faint scent of lilies and smoke through the halls. The clocks would chime softly, though no one had wound them, and in the reflection of the old greenhouse glass, if you looked closely enough, you could see two figures, one in a worn waistcoat, the other in a long, simple dress, standing side by side among the vines, watching, guarding, waiting. Hetty often left a candle burning in the study window for them, because though the story of Bellevue had ended, its echoes would live on in every whisper of wind that touched its garden, in every flower that grew wild where once there was only order. The land had finally remembered mercy, and for the first time in 2 centuries, Bellevue was at peace. They say some stories are too heavy for history books. They survive instead in the silence between generations, in the soil, the stone, the blood that remembers even when the mind forgets. Bellevue was never just a house, it was a wound, and then a voice. Through Hetty, it spoke again, not to glorify what was, but to heal what had been broken. The roots that once fed on ashes now cradle life. The ghosts that once demanded silence now rest in the sound of wind through open windows. And somewhere between the living and the dead, In the tender space where forgiveness finally meets truth, the old mansion breathes. Its lights flicker softly against the night, a signal to those still searching for the courage to uncover what their own families buried long ago. Because every house holds a secret, and every secret, once spoken, sets the past free.